Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Slow Games Club, the book club for games. If you're new here, we play a different game every single month, and every single month you get to hear me interrogate the devs of said game. This month, I was going to say this year, this month we've been playing The Case of the Golden Idol. Brilliant game. I will let Andres introduce themselves.
Hello everyone. Super excited to be here. I'm one of the co-creators of The Case of the Golden Idol. I was a person who coded the game, learned to do it in the process, and created the story, the puzzles together with my brother Ernest, who was the artist behind the game. That's pretty much me.
I like how you're like, that's pretty much like you've done nothing. You've like created this amazing game. But we'll get that. I also realized I forgot to introduce myself because I do this every month. If you don't know me by now, I'm Jazina. I'm your host. Anyway, Andres, I'm going to put you on the pressure because I like to do this because I'm a bit evil. Tell us about the game in your own words. You can take as long as short as you like.
The Case of the Golden Idol is this murder mystery game where you're presented with a say slightly animated but mostly static vignette of often gruesome, always mysterious murder scene, and you're tasked to gather all the evidence, observe all the clues, and then open the thinking panel and fill in the story. Like drag the words that you have gathered to create a story which explains that, this person killed that person in that way because they really wanted their thing.
The thing. I will say that we try to avoid massive end of game spoilers, but to be honest with you, avoiding all spoilers doesn't make this conversation fun. So massive end of game spoilers we won't speak about. But if you're really nervous about spoiling your experience, I would say save this and then come back. So this way we can get into the real nitty-gritty and all the secrets of the game. I guess this isn't really a question, but my experience, I found this game really difficult especially towards the end. And I'm looking at the community of the Slow Games Club, and they were all showing off that I was like, oh, it's a nice balance of thinking and it ramps up a little bit, but it was fine. And I was like, oh my goodness, I do not understand. Towards the end, I have no idea who done it. I don't know why they done it. How did you, I guess, turning this into a question, how difficult was it to get the difficulty meter set up and the puzzles and the challenges?
Our approach to building this game, it's been kind of very, we use phrase handcrafted, but we didn't use stats, for instance. We did gather feedback in surveys from our players, but mostly I'd say we relied on having lots of playtests in which we watched how they play, and then we note down and trusted our gut feel, like, was this a good experience or not? But yeah, we didn't have like nice breakdown. Oh, like 50% fall off at this puzzle, so this puzzle needs to be a bit more comprehensible. We didn't do that at all, which means the game is edgy in the sense that it's not sanded off. Like some parts work better for some people, some don't work at all. And at some point we decided that that's actually how we want it to be, because difficulty is very subjective, and yeah, like some like we try to like we can identify like this is way too difficult, like nobody understands what the hell is going on here. Or someone launches the game like a new scenario and everything's clear to them in the first minute, okay, then we know we have a problem. But otherwise the balance has, like we know that people sometimes get stuck in places we did not expect, and we're kind of fine. Like that's part of the experience.
I found that it was like beautifully crafted in the sense that at the beginning I had no idea what I was getting myself into because I don't like spoilers. I like to go in completely blind, and I haven't really played a game like this at all. But I found with the first scene, it was perfect. There was a bit like, hey, what am I doing here? But as soon as you get the hang of it, you're like, oh, this is nice. And it eased me into this really nice false sense of security. And we spoke earlier, and this kind of leads me into my next question, and I think it's kind of a question that the community want to know as well, is chapter 5, the dinner party, where someone killed someone and they were asked to by someone else, and there's something, oh, is that a spoiler? Too late. Out the window. I really enjoyed that scene, and then figuring out who was sitting where, etc. And I found that not easy, but okay. And then when I'm like doing my research, everyone was like, this is like a really hard level. I guess the question there is, what levels did you find were harder than you expected them to be, as like from a majority, or easier? Did you find any of that?
Yeah, it's a tricky question because so firstly, over the period of development, overall the game became easier than it was initially, and we like starting out. We prefer overshooting in the difficulty or like confusion part because it's easier to correct for like clarity. Like you can, like, okay, it's super hard to understand who sat where at the table. Okay, we can add some extra puzzles, some extra hints. I mean, not puzzles, but if everything's very clear at the very start, like complicating things is much harder. But to actually answer your question, so honestly, yeah. So firstly, the scenario you mentioned, the intoxicating dinner party, which is, I think, according to our community, one of the most popular scenarios in the game. Maybe because it's like it has this super classic murder mystery vibe, but that one was very difficult to get right. It was way too hard for a very long period of time, and curiously, not the table puzzle, but there is the puzzle where each person lives, and with that we remade it loads of times. We had a version of it where you had to detect who is married and who's not, and people had rings and they had some kind of relationship hints, and then that created very, like, it misled people. Yeah, I guess one funny effect of difficulty is not sometimes that people can't figure out what you want from them, but they invent like their own ideas what's going on. And you actually have to somehow actively snuff them out. Like you have to signal that no, that's not possible. Like I'm still clinging to this scenario, but in that scenario, in one of the rooms is a set of lockpicks, and that's already a very dangerous item because some players start imagining, but the person who owns these lockpicks, he must have been sneaking into other rooms and planting things there, and like we can't deal with that.
I love the idea that people make the game more complicated for themselves because they're like, if this is a murder, then they must have done things to cover their footprint. So this clue is not a clue; it's a setup. Did you have that quite often? Like
oh yes, yeah, that's that's definitely a thing where you. Oh, I'm not gonna believe this. Like our more experienced players, they have this. They're like almost like lawyers. They're like, okay, allegedly this person claims this.
I I wish that I had that lawyer mindset, because one of the later puzzles, it was, you couldn't really trust what people were saying because they had been drugged, and where they said they were, the times are off, and I was like, I'm so confused because I don't understand who I thought had done it and didn't do it, because I thought of the my brain is obviously just too simple. From the beginning, I was like, oh, this person done it, not realizing that that was a puzzle where someone had planted something on someone else. And then in the end, I was like, I had got too tunnel vision in my thoughts. One of the questions that everyone wants to know, so I'm going to answer it like quite early. I think it kind of ties in. Is, what is your personal favorite level, and like why is that? It's a tricky question. You're going to say all of them.
No, not definitely not all of them. There are these, like, you know what tier lists are, right? Like there are these tier list templates that you can download, and there are tier list templates for Golden Idol scenarios. Turns out I didn't know it's a thing. I discovered it, and then in my mind I tried ranking the scenarios, and honestly, the boring answer is I think actually the dinner scenario is my favorite one, but if we don't look at, oh no, actually, okay, mild spoilers here, but one of the things that I really love in it is, like, in my mind I have a sort of like perfect playthrough of a scenario where if it goes the way I want it to be, is players at the end of it have like their biggest aha moment, like they have this big epiphany which either reframes or just delivers this like oh, now I see this feeling, and the in this scenario there is secret code, and usually people struggle with it, and at the very end when they finally understand it and they read the decoded message, they have this like, oh, I see it, like that feeling of enlightenment, and if it happens like that, then it's a perfect playthrough. But another one, what I want to mention, which is very polarizing one, it's I think it's number 7. I don't know well the numbers of our scenarios because we changed their order, and our in-house numbering was different than the
Yeah.
public one. But it's about the cult, strange practices of
Oh,
secret society.
is that the one where you start outside in like the
Yeah,
forest
yeah,
and
yeah.
you go, oh, I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like it because I think it's spooky, weird, and a thing that we were trying to do was not to make all scenarios too samey, because like people really love portrait puzzle, for instance, like getting faces to names, names to faces, and in this case. We decided, okay, not to repeat ourselves. Let's try something else, and let's make this a sort of kind of folksy riddly, like with riddles scenario where you can't rely on your like hard logic, but now you have to tap into your some kind of other approach, and that makes it kind of weird and spooky, but it's polarizing. As I said, some people really hate riddles and need to interpret weird rituals. And
Yeah, I really like that level actually, because it was quite, you started in like one environment and then you went into this like cult place and you're like, what the hell? Then you go upstairs and you're like, what the hell? And then you go like down the corridor and I just felt like that whole level, every area that I went into, I was like, what are these lot? Because I think before then, I might be wrong, you kind of get hints that there's a little cult because everyone's got their little rings. So you're like, something's going on. And I think that's the first time where you're like, these lot are up to something in here. I also quite like the when you're in the not the cavern, not the cavern, what's the word? Cabin, bloody hell. The cabin in the woods, and you go through the door and the explosion, and it was quite dynamic. That was really interesting. Was that quite, do you know which one, the explosion?
Yeah.
Was that quite hard to do?
It was hard to do, not to make people vomit. No, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but we like initially our animation, like it restarted all the time. Like it was constantly exploding, and that totally made people like it was causing nausea. But then we found, okay, yeah, we need to play it once when you enter the location, then it stops, and then there's like a smaller loop. But it's what you mentioned. So we don't have like internal rule if there's like multiple locations in a scenario. Where do you start? Like we try to mix it up, but sometimes we start with a place where you have the body kind of in your face. Bam, here's the body. Like deal with it. Because for instance, I really like the contrast in the Little Mermaid scenario. You start in this sad place with a bloody body, but then you go downstairs and there's a party and it's nice and cozy.
Oh, sorry, I heard Little Mermaid place.
The murder at the Little Mermaid.
In the bar. The
Yeah. So you create that feeling, but then in the cabin we wanted to escalate. Like you start in the wood, then you go deeper. Oh, there's like some weird thing going on, and then there's even crazier stuff.
Yeah, it's talking about it in chat, and I think it's really one of the things that you don't really realize if you're not a dev and you're just a gamer, like about motion sickness in games. So the fact that you were talking about the explosion making people feel uneasy, making you feel a bit unwell, is so interesting to me. Like messing with FPS can it's obvious, but it's also not something that I would have thought about before.
Yeah, we're not super sensitive with Ernest about these things, but yeah, we just have played like if you have playtest during which someone says, okay, I'm not feeling good, then you realize, okay, yeah, there's a thing we need to address.
I'm gonna do this really annoying thing where I go back and forth. We're not gonna do like graphics and then characters. I'm just gonna go with the flow. And I think chat are talking about something really interesting. They're talking about trying to discuss this without too many spoilers. Names of faces. So we spoke earlier, and I said I'm awful. Like I would recognize people and completely forget their names, but I think I recognize them. And the question here is, I'm wondering how do I pose this question that's not too spoilery? God, I've stumped myself. I've just started into a very interesting topic, but I don't. That's such a massive spoiler, isn't it? Chat, help me. What's the question I'm trying to answer? Some host I am. The twists, right? Mm-hmm. How early was that something that was always in there, or did you add that in afterwards to make it deliberately more harder?
It was almost, I would say, like it kind of was always there, because our like we hadn't written out the whole story, but we had figured out like what are sort of like main plot beats, as we're calling them, and we knew that this one person kind of engages with a conflict with this faction, and actually kind of triumphs in the end and then falls. But how it happens, like what happens in between, we didn't know. So I would say the twist was there from the beginning, but the precise nature of the twist was not known to us. Like we kind of discovered as we built the game, which I think is super important. Like you need to allow yourself during the development to find out new things. The example I always use is that we had planned to kill off Walter Keane like at the start immediately. Like he was meant to be a one-off character, but we fell in love with him and kept him around.
I love that. So yeah, tell me about that. So what made you fall in love with him? Why did you not kill him?
Okay. This is also like semi-spoilery thing, but we kind of like there is the logic of the events part where we realize that that for the story to progress in the direction we wanted it to go, we actually needed someone from the cult to stick around, like for further events to work. Like, so the logic of events required it, but primarily, I don't know, he felt like this flamboyant, outrageous person, and I think the moment Ernest had created the picture for this newspaper, like Gentleman Robber Strikes Again, I felt like, okay, this is something cool. We need more of that.
Were there any characters that you thought people would really gel with, and they didn't? And the opposite, were the people that you thought you put in the game thinking, oh, this is just a character, and people for some reason really love them?
We didn't have like particular expectations, about whom someone would really love, because our game is like it's full of bastards. Like, like most of the characters in our game are horrible.
They are so mean.
Yeah, they are mean, vain, stupid, all great things. So it's hard to tell which of these will resonate with audience. But what we didn't absolutely expect, in our community, somehow people started really loving Little Pip, like this small boy. Yeah, where my brother Ernest, he kind of has a like he's excellent at drawing ugly people, but drawing a small child, drawing a small child is challenging for him, and everyone notices Little Pip, says, "Oh, what is this ugly midget? Like, what is this thing?" But Little Pip has experienced loads of abuse from playtester reactions, but at some point they realize, okay, that's a child, and then they have this, he has a small cult in our Discord. There are speculations that Little Pip is behind things also in the second game, and then
we're gonna get onto that as well, your second game. But I'm really upset because I tried for 2 days straight. Obviously, my brain just wasn't working to find your Discord so I could infiltrate it. And I couldn't find the link. So please put that on your what we call it now, Twitter, X, somewhere, so I can for future stalk you. So someone's put in big twist. There's a massive clue in the name, but requires some knowledge from outside of the game, which I think is quite cool. Makes people who get it feel smart. Well, thank you very much, Alan, because I don't think I got it. And now I don't feel very smart at all. Can we talk about the massive? Firstly, is that massive clue news to you? Is that on purpose, or do you have no idea what Alan's talking about either?
No, I precisely know what they're talking about, and it's also this weird balance where our design philosophy was you don't need some specific outside knowledge to play this game. Like, we don't want you to now Google some kind of, I don't know, 18th century events or things like that, or you don't need to precisely know the value of pound during that period. But at the same time, we do want to rely on smaller things to kind of evoke a feeling, or to like offer smaller clues which may not be obvious, but once someone realizes what's going on, they look at this and then they have this nice also aha moment, like, oh, I see why this name is like that.
Okay, I really want to know what this at risk of being too spoilery, but I think if I don't ask it and everyone else is as stumped as I am, I'm going to get abuse in the Discord for keeping everyone on hanging. So what is this big twist? The clue in the name. What is this? It's not just the case of the Golden Idol. We're talking about the Golden Idol. Is it more than that?
No, it's the name of the character. It's okay. I can explain it. Should
Clue
I?
in the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the middle of the game, there appears this new character, Lazarus Hurst, and Lazarus from Bible is the character who gets resurrected.
I feel really stupid right now. These are aha moments that we're talking about, and you just saw that reaction. Everyone watching is just like, oh, she just got it. Okay, sometimes no one ever said I was intelligent. Okay, the next question that if I don't we got loads of time, but if I don't ask, I know I don't actually get abuse in the Discord, by the way, but I like just to pretend I'm a victim. The characters. So the characters are obviously we spoke a little bit about it, about Little Pip. The characters have a very distinct art. Well, the game has a very distinct art style. It kind of reminds me of, like, if you got someone that doesn't like English people to draw English people, that's what it would look like. So yeah, let's talk about that, the art style. Where did you get the ideas from, and why are the people so ugly?
Yeah, so the general art style was kind of a calculated move. Like it's pixel art, and as this was our first indie game project, and we had, like, you always struggle with getting your game across, and then marketing, and like getting engagement. We kind of wanted to play it safe, and we chose pixel art because it's like this sort of recognizable language of indie games. Like usually you see a pixel art game, you see, okay, that's an indie game, and in our case, we also wanted to speak to the audience of old point-and-click adventure games. So even though I don't think Golden Idol is a point-and-click adventure game, like the gameplay, I think, is quite different. But what we believed that audience would still enjoy our game, and we wanted to speak to them. Also, secondly, and this is curiously, like, fundamental problem of games, like nowadays, massive, like, 3D games, they have such, like, high fidelity, like everything's super detailed, but that would be horrible for a detective game, because you see, like which of these clues is important. Like I can see, like, I don't know, super detailed bookshelf, but we filled with books, like that's overwhelming. But pixel art, it's kind of simple, which means you can get away with highlighting just certain things, simplifying things, and not being that detailed about everything. That's the reason. So as everyone knows, our, like, biggest inspiration was Return of the Obra Dinn game, which is 3D, but it's like effectively 1-bit game. Like its visual style is also very specific, and it helps you notice details because its level of detail is actually very low. But and then lastly, about the ugliness of characters, that's fully on Ernest. He's
right, where is this Ernest? We need to get him here right now.
He's he's a painter. He's got lots of influences from painters of the past, and I remember one of influences was I think Dore, but there was another one whose name I've forgotten. But there are particular artists actually from that period of time, which he liked. But to be honest, he's always loved, I think, drawing these kind of outrageous, faces, because I think when you notice, like you see the mug of David Goren, and you already have so many ideas, like what's up with this guy, like he looks so shady, so shifty, like he's killed already a few people in dark alley, and that's just when you notice his face, and I think that's great, like it gets your ideas flowing.
Yeah, I agree. I think you spoke about the arts are about, the pixel art adding to, I guess, the mystery, and having anything too clear, it does take away from that being able to explore. Someone in chat said it was the 18th century, so everyone was ugly. And I mean, I wonder what I would actually, let me not. I was gonna say, I wonder what I would look like, but I really don't want you to go away and Ernest to draw me in the version of the case, because that might hurt my ego and I might cry a little bit. Where's my thoughts are? Was the art style set, or did you play about with it? Did you always know? I know you mentioned why, but was it always set, or did you play about and find that this was the art style that suited this game?
I'd say it was pretty set early on. Like we and Ernest, I think it was fully set when. So the very first scenario that we created is with the dead gentleman in his bed. Like the second scenario, when we were still like figuring out, does this concept hold up, and the second scenario we created was this murder in the Little Mermaid Inn, and I think once Ernest created this nice candle lit bar scene where people are playing cards, like we felt, okay, this feels very nice. It's very enjoyable to look at it, and then we didn't change the style fundamentally, but what we did realize is that, and this is again something we like, what we want to do more also in future is sometimes the game is like you have this from the side like vignette style look, but sometimes it's interesting to observe things from different angles, kind of like, in a movie you want to place camera in different places, you want to show weirder angles and things like that, and we're slightly trying to do it in some places in this game, but not a lot.
Yeah, I generally just loved exploring and the faces, and the deaths were very gruesome. Was there like a line? How did you find that balance between the kind of the gruesome deaths, but also not making it horror, if that makes sense?
None of us enjoys gore. Like we are, I'd say, quite mild in that sense, and Ernest does. I mean, obviously he has to draw it. He doesn't want to draw particularly bloody stuff, and that's actually one of the reasons why so there is the scenario in the cabin with the explosion. We had planned out some like different, much more gruesome deaths for the intruders, but we realized, okay, but then you need to draw it and it will look like terrifying, and we just don't want to go there. So like one example would be like if you what if you give a human body lots of water, like way too much water, what happens to it? Like I don't know, but it sounds horrible, and it would lead to actually very horrifying scenes, and as Golden Idol is not a scary game, I think.
No.
Yeah, we didn't go there.
I feel like the idol itself, the mechanics of, forget about the mechanics of the game, right? The mechanics of the idol, when you're doing that puzzle where you're working out, this heats up, this takes, was very clever. The puzzle around that was clever, but the idol mechanics themselves was very clever. How did you come up with that? Was there any inspiration you took from outside for the actual idol itself?
Yeah, actually, there was. I quickly need to check if I'm.
You're not lying.
No, I'm just. Is this the correct term? I think it is, but I might be mistaken. But our inspiration was actually, I think the term is Maxwell's demon, which is in physics, I think, a kind of hypothetical thought experiment. Where it is Maxwell's demon. Yeah, I found it in Wikipedia, which would allow for a being to violate the laws of thermodynamics. Like that was an inspiration for us, but fundamentally we didn't know how idol works precisely until we built that fourth scenario. Not fourth, but the cabin. That's sixth. Yeah, cabin. Sixth one. Yeah. Until then, we didn't know how it works. We just know that it's some kind of ancient magic stuff. And yeah,
that's really interesting. So obviously, one of the big parts of the game is that they use it to kind of be in power, right, of this cult. So did you know it was going to be used like that at the beginning? Because you said you didn't really know how the idol worked until that scene. But the lighthouse scene came afterwards. If my memory serves.
Yeah. Then we already knew it. But when the poor guy is set on fire, then we didn't know yet. We just know that okay, you can burn someone with idol. That's how far we knew. In that scenario, there are like idol symbols, which the person who set someone on fire has in their bag. In the early version, they had some kind of strange magical phrase instead, because we didn't know how it works.
That's really interesting. Is there anything else that kind of you had the idea or an idea that either got changed later on development or evolved like the idol did?
There must have been quite a bit. I'm quickly thinking what were like more interesting ones. Oh, okay. That's heavily in spoiler territory. But so okay. So there is a hero in kind of like at the end of the game. There is a sort of someone who saves the world, I could say. But who that would be changed quite a bit. Like we had a bunch of options there, and then we were having lots of discussions where and how do we want to approach it. So yeah, that wasn't set in stone. Interestingly, and this is where we injected much more retconning. There is a love story which contributes to the fall of protagonist. That love story didn't exist until we created the very last scenario. We realized that okay, we don't have like good motivation here. We actually need to build it up, and so we went back to previous scenarios and inserted it everywhere where we needed it.
How difficult must that have been to, I guess, do the whole game and then go, oh wait, we're missing motivation, to go back and inject that into the scenes that you needed? How challenging was that?
It's very risky, because the game, as you said, it's. I think it's. I'll be honest. I think it's a bit of downside of our game is that it blasts you with loads of information. Like you go in scenario and you get lots and lots of stuff to do. Like normal person when they enter the doctor's salon scenario, they open the testimony book, they close it immediately. Because it's lots, and it means that any extra thing that we add kind of increases this load and potentially confuses or leads you astray. Like there's always a risk of people start creating some kind of side stories or things that are not there. So we always had to be very, very careful. Also, I would say it's kind of returning slightly to the question in general about changes. Our cult was, I would say, more complex. There were more like rules to it, but then we realized that we have to simplify, we have to cut information. Again, people are getting really confused by all the various rituals and things we've written, and there needs to be less.
It's really scary to hear that it was more complicated. You and your brother's brains must be amazing to kind of comprehend and even establish and bring this all about. So I'm just going to read chat 2 seconds.
I will though to quickly. I will disagree. Me and my brother, we know that we are absolutely average Golden Idol players because we had opportunity to playtest scenarios when creating the second game from our other designers, and I realized, I'm not bad. I'm probably slightly better than average, but not by much. I get stuck and frustrated in the same places as everyone else, and it's just that when you're creating it, you kind of have internalized all that information because you just slowly have been putting it in the scenario, so you know everything by heart, and it's very difficult for you to imagine how someone who has no idea what's going on will react to it.
It's very interesting chat talking about, I guess, the how complex it is, and you go into a scenario and there's like 4 rooms and you're like, oh my goodness. And there were times when I walked into a scene and my goal was to like do bits of investigate bits and pieces, not to put everything in my notebook, because I thought that would confuse me. And then towards the end, I was just clicking on everything. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get all the information that I can. And I found that it was good to get all the information you can and then kind of like go back into a certain room or certain person. And that's how I worked it out. Is that how you expected the game to work, or was that unexpected?
We realized there were like 2 distinct styles. One was I need to gather everything because I don't trust that I can start thinking until I've gathered everything.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm missing a critical detail and it's not even worth starting to think. And then the other is like I'm gonna immediately put in something that I see a connection. Someone names someone else. I will drag it immediately there, just so I've kind of I'm cataloging things as I'm going. And what's interesting is this style that like people I think as the game it is hard. I would agree. In a sense, they are worried that they don't have enough information to figure out stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we tried to create our game super transparent. Like we're directly saying now you have everything, and when you input something, we say, okay, you are right, or you're almost right, or you're incorrect. We're not trying to mess with how the game works, only with what's in the content.
This question, I'm not gonna take credit for it. It was our lovely Lord and Savior Brandon. So Brandon wrote loads of questions this time because I was on holiday, and I've completely ignored every single one of them. So sorry, Brandon, for all that hard work that I'm completely ignoring and just riffing. But here's a little shout out to you. So the game, it's really interesting because obviously there's a bit of politics in there. Was there, and there's like power and ambition and greed. Was there a message that you were trying to convey, or was that just to give it a bit of spice?
I think there is sort of, so I've worked with my brother quite a lot before. We've created lots of comics and short form, and we have, I think, a particular style on which we converge, where things sometimes are a bit absurd, a bit silly, and the stories are not particularly moralizing, but still, like, yeah, people often say that like one big theme of the first game is hubris. And it's actually okay. That's actually a small fun story. Story time. When we built the game as it is, our publisher said, "Hey, but the ending's kind of anticlimactic, no? Like, where's the big ending fight? Like, where's the like oomph, the big thing?" And we said, no, that's how we intended. Like, that's exactly the experience we want it to be. There is no like massive like this build-up showdown, but yeah, they were kind of expecting something else. But talking about the message, I think it inevitably creeps in your mind. We do discuss it. It's a more now than previously. Like we question what message are we delivering. Like, are we not suddenly creating something that we actually either don't agree or don't just want to convey? But otherwise, I think it's coming from either like media, literature, whatever, diet. For instance, Ernest, he's 4 years has worked as a political cartoonist. Like, it's kind of his profession. So I think it definitely shows in things, and it's also probably made us a bit cynical. We are not particularly idealistic about politics and power and nature of humans, how they relate to it.
This I giggled because is it Octanus? If I said that wrong, please just pretend I said it right. So the big fight at the end was between the neurons in my head, and I have to say the ending for me was so difficult. I like got into this world and there's all these different things, and honestly, when I'm looking at Discord and everyone's like, "Oh yeah," like it was a nice difficulty. I was like, this right here, this was difficult for me to actually completing it and then finding out the whys and the hows and having the story really tied together. That was satisfying for me. And the fight was the neurons in my brain. Like you said, making games like this, you either have people that find it quite easy or people that really struggle. And I'll put my hands up right now. I struggled towards the end. What was my question? I don't think there was a question. I think I was just having. I think that was a statement. That was a statement. Anything you would like to add?
Just to slightly riff on your statement. I don't know if you clicked hints button in our game or not, but if you click it, it has this actually message that, hey, getting stuck is part of the experience. We had internally very precisely defined for us that like the best case is you go, you think you know the answer, you input it, you realize, oh, it's not the answer, you get stuck, you get frustrated, and then you reevaluate, reframe your understanding, and you have this epiphany moment. Like that. So kind of getting stuck is part of the ideal flow, but obviously it doesn't work like the same for everyone. Like some people may get stuck way too long on things, and actually they become so miserable that even when they finally understand, they are so tired and frustrated that they are like, this game, it's just cruel.
It was cruel, but in a fun way. I really like that it was on purpose. We want you to be frustrated, but it wasn't a frustration for me anyway. It wasn't a frustration where I was like, oh, this game. It was, oh my gosh. And then I did use the hints quite a lot, I'll be honest with you, towards the end. But then it's like, oh my gosh, I should have known that. It's a very a good frustration for me. Okay, so if the case of the Golden Idol, if it was like adapted to another medium, if it wasn't a game, what would you like it to be? A book, a movie, a series?
This is one of the questions I looked at before and thought a bit more, like because we've had a bunch of like offers and discussions, like can you use some kind of like either maybe bigger IP for Golden Idol or thing like that, and we've always been very reserved about it. You kind of want to just create your own thing, and likewise, I wouldn't say that like we're super excited about the thought. Okay, I know someone creates Netflix series, Case of Golden Idol, because quite likely it wouldn't translate very well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually okay. I'll ask you a question. Do you think?
Ask me a question.
Yeah. Is that allowed? Can you do that?
I'm getting ready. Let's go.
Okay. Do you think playing a detective game and watching a detective show, are they similar experiences? What are your thoughts?
No, absolutely not. I think I mentioned this before. So detective stuff for me usually, because I'm a gamer and a reader, so reading detective stuff isn't, because I'm like I've kind of figured this out. Watching detective stuff, again, I'm like I've kind of figured it out. Playing detective games for me is harder for me to figure out who done it. I don't know what games add. I think with games you can deliberately leave stuff out without ruining the narrative, right? But in a film, a movie, or in a book, leaving stuff out just feels a bit rude. It's like, why have you left that out? But in the game, you can deliberately, maybe it's what you said about earlier about cameras, right? It's one place, one scene, and you can't really rotate it. But in a movie, you're like, why did you not just turn that over? Why did you not notice this? So with all my waffle, no, I don't. I much prefer detective games in terms of games. Maybe I feel like I can use my brain a lot more instead of allowing someone else to use my brain. Did that make any sense? Gosh, I'm not used to being the person answering questions. This is spicy.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that they are different. Like where they are similar, maybe that they may create similar mood or like feel like this is like, I don't know, criminal procedure like movie or show or game like that. But the process, I think, is very different, just because watching something is passive process, and
yeah,
I'm almost leaning in a different like in the opposite direction, where I'm not necessarily like even trying to figure out everything that's going on while I'm watching a movie, because like if I wanted to do it, should I be pausing it and now observing details?
Yes.
But then maybe I should be playing a game instead of watching a movie. Like so, yeah. I feel like these are a bit different things. But to finally come to the answer of your question, I thought, yeah, would there be a medium? And then I thought, Adventure Time style animation. That something like that. Maybe that would be very interesting. Yeah.
I like that. Oh, okay. So we need to talk to your publishers and be like, hey, You don't do animation, but you can. Let's get this ball rolling. Talking about like kind of briefly, this question kind of briefly touches what I went on is like in games you can deliberately hide things to keep the mystery. In movies and books, I think it's a lot harder. You feel a bit cheated. And so basically the question is, how hard was it to not make the massive clue, the big twist, obvious from the beginning? Because when you play the game, you go back, you're like, I feel like I should have been aware of this. Was it difficult to not spoil the game early on?
It was very easy not to spoil it because there's one thing that you have to take in mind. Our experience building the game was very different in that sense that playtesters sometimes would play scenarios out of order. They'd often have already forgotten all the previous scenarios. Like we suddenly give them, okay, now Dr. Salon's like scenario, and they almost play it like unique new session. It's one of the reasons, as I said, like the game was kind of much harder for them because they'd forget like who previous characters were and things like that, and so only towards the very end, when we finally could test all the game together, we could check and see like how obvious or not obvious like this bigger whole plot is, and in the end, again, we don't have stats, we have vibes only we can observe, and I'm very happy with current vibes where there are people who say like, oh my god, I only discovered it in the epilogue, or oh, this was such like big aha moment for me in the finale, and then there are some like, oh, I knew it all along, like it was clear.
No, they didn't. Yeah. I don't believe them. I don't believe it. Only to make myself feel a bit more intelligent. If people are getting it so early, then I need to get my brain tested. I'm gonna go just look in Discord because we had a few questions. So I don't want to miss them. I know we've still got, I don't know, half hour. There's two other questions that I want to ask you personally, but let me go into Discord and find some questions. Okay, yeah. So if you could go back and change one thing about the game before releasing it, what would it be, if anything? And they also said it's one of their favorite games of all time, and they were in the chat, so they might pop up. Yeah.
Thank you. That's super nice. Damn, that's difficult. Okay, I'll give a very small and silly answer because it's like I can't on the spot figure out like something. Okay, no, I will be honest. Like I really like how the game turned out. I don't want to change almost anything about it. But if I could, firstly, I would shorten the challenge before accessing hints. Like it's unnecessarily hard. It could have been easier. Like you can access hints faster. In the sequel, for instance, we toned it down. Secondly, I'm really happy that we, again, in the sequel, added not only all gathered phrases, but have you clicked on everything to even more give you this sense of security that you've got everything. Everything's clear. Yeah, other things would be something more fundamental that would, I think, affect too much the nature of the game. But it's, yeah.
I like that
hard to evaluate.
You can ask questions here. Of course you can, yeah. I like that answer. You made a game with your heart and you loved it, and it went out and you loved it. You don't, that's brilliant. And it, so just in case anyone's waiting didn't know this, but it was you and your brother that made the Case of the Golden Idol, right? It wasn't a massive studio. It was just two people and a composer, right? I'm right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I think that's there's a theme when I do these is that I always start gushing over the devs, and I just think it's brilliant. Was there any, this is a question that just popped into my head, was there anything in the game that you and your brother were like, I'm not sure this is gonna work? You liked it, your brother didn't, your brother didn't like it and you did. Was there any situations like that?
settings, I'd say, in the process, most of the situations were like that. When we were building the game, we'd quarrel a lot, and mainly usually on the like we'd grab a scenario and then we have this what we're calling conceptual phase where we're trying to figure out, okay, what are the events, what's going on here, and so we have kind of our styles where Ernest he's very actively questioning, like, okay, but does that even make sense? Would this person do it? Like, why are they doing it in this complicated round manner? Like, nobody acts like that. He's very good at kind of poking holes at your ideas, and then you came with your nice brainstormed story, and it plops like a balloon because he's found a very logical action by someone, and I'm on the other hand. I'm very much interested in kind of maybe the sort of like dramatic pacing of scenario, and also like when we are actually building it, so the puzzles kind of flow from smaller to more exciting ones. That's my ideal. But we did fight over lots of things. I want to find some fun example there. Okay, I mean that's it's not gonna be like massively interesting, but somewhat interesting. I for the same intoxicating dinner party, I spent a day writing up rich, detailed letters between characters who are in love, and there's relationship, and there are kind of like things going on, and he looked at it and said, "That's way too much. Like that nobody needs that."
Yes,
and I thought,
we
why?
did.
And I thought, why? Like I spent, but when I thought about it, I said, yes, this is massive loads of unnecessary stuff that doesn't need to be there. Like we should simplify here, and we totally.
I say you release them. I say you release the letters. Release them. Let's read them. Let's read them. Release them.
Release the logs. Yeah.
Release them.
And another example of that was, it's a similar one, but there is the lighthouse scenario where there's this the dead person who has kind of slighted everyone. Like everyone has a bit of grudge against them, and originally he had like lots of letters on him, but you didn't know from whom, but like you could see that everyone hates him. But all these letters were very confusing people, and like this is kind of, again, nature of our game. It's not realistic at all. It just pretends to be realistic, so you can use real life rules to apply kind of conclusions, but because like nobody carries the letters around, like nobody writes letters the way we do. They are ours are much shorter and etc. But it just has to feel real.
I agree with Alan. I think there should be a law. Cheese on toast. That's a tongue twister. There should be a law reward when you finish the game. So I say, as your new what am I? I'm going to be your CEO now. Release them. Release the letters. We want to see the letters. We want to see them all. A technical question, because I am not a technical person, so I quite like that there's a technical question here in the midst. So I have no idea what I'm asking, by the way. I'll be completely real with you. I have no idea what Godot is. Oh, it's a game engine. Oh, like Unreal? Is it similar? Yeah. Okay. How did you find using Godot as a game engine for developing the game?
It was. I think it was good because I'm not a professional code developer. I had only few hobby projects before in Adobe Flash many years ago, and it was actually easy to learn it. I liked it better than Unity. I tried Unity before, and I got overwhelmed by it. Godot felt for me more intuitive. I would definitely recommend it, but it's still like if you're complete, say, beginner in game development, I would suggest other tools, like even easier and simpler tools like Construct, because it's still finicky. It has its things. There's stuff that you can't easily do unless you go deep enough. And there were loads of times where I'd spend a day frustratingly trying to get like why is the mouse click not registering on this button? Like, what am I doing wrong? Why is that not happening? And yeah, there are challenges, but otherwise, it's really nice, and it's open source. It's free of charge, and it's super small. You can just download, grab, and start making something.
If there's anyone else that has any like really technical questions, feel free to ask them, because unfortunately my darling co-host couldn't make it today, and it's usually the co-host that asks the more deep technical devy type questions. I'm here just asking questions of vibes. I'll be completely honest with you. Okay, so a question. I'm going to go through a Discord a bit more. So the starting point for the game, right? Was it the narrative? Did you have a story in mind? Was there a concept or a mechanic that you really wanted to capture, and that's how the game grew? Like, what was that starting pillar?
It was very mechanic driven game. Our early prototypes had nothing to do with Case of Golden Idol story. Yeah, it's the early prototype was about Polish student dorms where the student dies from overdosing. I suddenly forgot for diabetes what you use the thing. I forgot what's the name of it. What like the lower your blood sugar, the thing that you inject.
The insulin.
Insulin, yes, which I should know because I have diabetes. Suddenly I forgot the name of insulin. So yeah, it was something completely different. But with once we got sort of close to the design how we wanted it to work, only then we kind of started thinking about the story. Okay, so this is also a small story. Our original idea was that, okay, there's going to be this story about this cursed artifact. We will tell them in these, what we're calling scenarios, like cases, but we will change time all the time. Like, we'll start in 18th century, but then we'll maybe go to like modern times, like maybe like 80s, and then maybe we jump to ancient Egypt. Like that was kind of this idea, like we'll go all over the place. Like who doesn't want to do a detective like in ancient Egypt? But once we had built first I think 3 or 4 scenarios, and we felt like, okay, like maybe we're nearing the moment where we should be doing this time shift. I think it was I said like, wait, no, I think we should not do that. Like we've built up some characters, and the story should be character driven. And now, if we completely discard them, then all that is lost. Let's stay where we are.
That's so interesting. So initially, you would have followed, I guess, from my understanding, the idol's journey through time, and not the characters. And then you changed it to follow the story of. So I love these little nuggets. I love them. So and you mentioned that. So initially it was mechanically driven. So what was that key mechanic that you were like, this is what we want to focus on?
I think the super key mechanic was that we loved Return of the Obra Dinn, but it's 3D game. You navigate 3D environment. It's first person, which in a way on its own is a bit prohibitive. both for players and for developers, because as developers we need to develop 3D environments. But we thought, okay, can we do this very minimalistic style where you just have a static picture and you click on things and see what we call in close-ups. So one thing we validated, is that enough to offer like this exploration aspect? And then the second thing was, how does communicating that you figured out the mystery work? The very earliest prototype is actually, I just made a scene with close-ups which Ernest could navigate, and I said to him, okay, tell me what's going on here in your own words. But then we had a version where you had to construct sentences, like you would add a new sentence and you choose its subject, verb and object. But that system's overwhelming, because you can construct sentences which are true but not what we care about.
Yes.
And then we in the end decided, okay, maybe this much simpler, just drag in missing words and slots is the easiest one.
This question is so wholesome, and I read it and smiled even more than I'm usually smiling. So I'm going to ask it out loud. You probably read it, but how do you feel knowing that you inspired an entire subgenre of mystery games?
I think the feeling is absolutely unreal, because even though I do have quite lengthy background in game development, that was mobile and social network games, like completely different style of games in the past. And when we set out on this journey to build an indie game, kind of take this risk, the moment after publishing it, and then when kind of this praise started piling up, like that felt already very unreal. The moment Jason Schreier tweeted his praise for it, like that felt like, because he's like a big person in the industry, felt very crazy. And now already like a couple of years later, seeing that they're popping up these, I'm going to call them golden idol likes, it still feels unreal, because just a couple of years ago I was not doing anything with games, and suddenly you've created a sort of shift in this niche.
Oh, I love it. As you notice, I've turned from, my questions are now more quick fire, because I'm trying to get through as many of these as possible. Just to say, I played last year Chance of Sonar, and the mechanics that they use reminded me of this. Well, obviously the opposite way around, but your game came out before, so I felt that was really interesting. So I think you might have touched on it before, but what would you say were the games that inspired the Case of Golden Idol, other than Obra Dinn, which I might need to play because I've heard so much about it? But
a game that for me always comes to mind is Her Story, which is this game where you effectively just search police database for short video clips of interrogation archive, where a lady is being interviewed about the murder that has happened, and you kind of you can just input a search term, and if it appears in her dialogue transcript, then a list of videos will appear, and it's very fun in the way that you discover the story in a very non-linear manner, and it was, I'd say, also one of the early games where you really felt like a detective, where you're building your theories, what's going on, and you gradually in your notebook effectively building up the story. That was strong, that one. I think, and then definitely for me it's Outer Wilds, because it's my very favorite game, which is not detective themed, but but it's mystery themed, and you do discover things and set on like you're driven by curiosity, which I think is something that we were inspired by a lot. I think Case of Golden Idol tries to follow this indie tradition where you're kind of rebelling against AAA, AAA trends. We're gonna carefully hold you by the hand and curate you and be a bit patronizing and sometimes quite boring just because everything's downing in tutorials and mini maps and all that jazz, and instead kind of throwing you in somewhere, offering potentially rough at start but free experience.
That brings me beautifully to another question from Discord. I'm going to try and remember the answers in as much detail as you gave, so I can like write them up in Discord afterwards for people that didn't make it. But the question is about the hint system and like how you manage that. So how did you develop the multi-level hint system? Where did you start with it? And was there anything that motivated the design? Because I think it's really like it's good. I like the the color coding, like, oh, you're nearly there when there was 2 wrong and you're like, oh, I probably just need to swap. How did that come about?
It's an it's an interesting question in that sense that whenever someone speaks about Golden Idol and they use word hints, I have lots of options what they are talking about, because internally when we refer to hints, we talk about the hints that you unlock to access like concrete like sort of tips how to progress in the game, but often when people talk about hints they either mean the actual clues in the game, in the scenery, or maybe they talk about the phrases that you gather. Like it can be anything, but I feel like the question is about kind of how did we build up sort of the clues which you gather, and then you kind of understand what's going on. And our philosophy was that unless we try to avoid bottlenecks, like you have to notice this one thing to progress. We usually want like that there's like alternative ways or alternative things to notice. Honestly, we didn't do it always, because sometimes actually again too many details becomes overwhelming, or we just didn't manage to fill in enough alternatives, and so there are definitely bottlenecks in the game, but the approach, like a nice example for this is again the strange practices of the secret society scenario, the what was it, 7th one, because people always go through it like they kind of solve it from one direction or from another direction. Either they figure out the intended direction is you solve the ritual puzzles. From those you understand what are the roles and the ranks, and then you understand like the rest of the mystery. But people sometimes somehow figure out the roles and the ranks, and then from those they actually get to the what kind of ritual is going on here, like kind of in the opposite direction. And I'm super happy that it's happening. Like I really love the moments when someone plays the game and that playthrough is kind of very much different in how they figured things out.
I've got a few little questions, but I'm just wary. The time just goes so quick. I don't know what happened. I don't know where it's gone. But talk to me a little bit, or talk to us, our little community here, about the rise of the Golden Idol. Talk to us about that.
So once Case was out a couple of months, our publisher said, "Hey, like it's doing great. We're super happy and excited for it. Like we from the start we knew that we will build a DLC. Oh, and that's also one change. Like initially we had just one DLC in mind, but then we couldn't fit our story in one, and we realized that we're absolutely unable to tell a story in 3 scenarios. Like we were accustomed to having more space, but yeah, we jumped to DLC just because it's easy to decide to do it just because you don't know what to do next. Okay, let's just add some more stuff to what you have. But while we were doing it, they came to us and said we should definitely do a sequel because it's like getting all this traction, and let's sort of like expand Golden Idolverse. And we thought, that sounds like a good plan, and the process of Rise development, I would say, was very much different from Case, just because we wanted it to be bigger. We needed to expand the team. There were some contracts in place, which meant that it had to be on for Netflix platform, on mobile, and on consoles, and we realized that making one scenario in the game takes like 1 to 2 months time. Like we can't make it faster. We're unable. And now, if in the case there are 12 cases, okay, like 9 of them are actually like full cases. That's already more than a year's time of building, like almost 1.5. Yeah, and in Rise we have 20 cases. So we looked for interesting, creative people with mystery experiences to expand the team. And yeah, building Rise was very different in the sense that it was not just this small team of me and Ernest, but we more stepped into kind of like manager director roles where you have to align you. I think that one of the biggest challenges was you want to give creative freedom to other creators. Like I see in chat someone mentioned like Bill and Danny from Escape This Podcast. Like they're amazing. They have cool ideas, and we want them to put the cool ideas in the game. But so we just say, okay, like you're fully free to build like whole scenario and maybe like full chapter, but at the same time, this still needs to feel like Golden Idol game. So we actually do have to align everyone's style, kind of impose our style, communicate things that are important for us. So in the end, when you play the game, it actually feels like a Golden Idol game and doesn't feel like very disjointed mess.
So for the case, there was you, your brother, and a composer. What's the team like now?
So when we were now it's already a bit smaller because like biggest task getting Rise out is behind us. But I'd say at peak, our sort of regular team was 6 people, and then there were something like 6 contractors, out of which 5 were creatives who were creating these various scenarios. But then there's also music, sound effects, and other things. I mean, we needed more artists. Like that's a very easy mistake, not mistake, but challenge. As the game is so handcrafted, it requires loads of art, and we needed lots of extra art for Rise.
Was there anything that you learned in making the case that you've taken over into development of the Rise?
Yes, I think we arrived at a pretty good framework how we build content, as long as the content consists of these playable chunks. Like if we now decide to build a sandbox game, I don't know how we would deal with that. Like we have no experience with that, because our philosophy is that you need to get feedback fast. Things need to be testable. you need to get out like something playable that you can show to a player and then see how they react as soon as possible. But yeah, if we explore a game which is more sort of like linked, like interchanged. For instance, I have no idea how someone tested the game like Outer Wilds, which is like everything has to be in place for it to work, but like you can't test it at the very last moment. But yeah, building, testing, chunky, separate content, for that we have now, I think, pretty good understanding.
Is there any like little secrets that are in the game that you snuck in that are quite funny or got interesting story?
On the one hand, it's one of my regrets that we didn't add, like I really wanted optional puzzles in like there are kind of optional puzzles, like you have to fill in only this skull puzzle to win a scenario, but I wanted more optional challenges, so those people who are saying, oh, this is too easy, they can have some maybe extra challenge, but we didn't have time to build them, and so there aren't like very deliberate secrets. But one secret which is quite nice, which Ernest built out, is so there are the symbols, Lemurian symbols that you input in the idle. There's like give and take, and then there was like gold, air, and water, and symbol for gold actually is a Lemurian symbol where the numbering system is not base 10 but base 12, and it's actually the atomic number of gold from our periodic table, and likewise it's for air, which in this case actually is not air but oxygen. It's one of the reasons why Edmund fails to create a vacuum, because oxygen is not like it's just a certain percentage of air we breathe, so you can suck out everything out. And this is something we didn't like. It's just the symbols in the game. We didn't ask players anything about it, but there were some who discovered it and figured it out, and it was very, very cool that someone went so deep in the rabbit hole.
I love it. You never, I feel like us gamers will fixate on things and really deep dive. Someone in chat said their favorite gag was, I threw that trashy literature away. As soon as I read that, I agree. I was like, I bet you didn't. I bet you read it every night. I bet you. Last question, I guess, because we've got like 2 minutes left, maybe one more, I don't know, we'll see. Can we expect a return of the gnome? And my brain is trying to remember what this is related.
I think it's the confiscated painting of a gnome in the tribunal scenario, where it's powerful imagery. When I watch streamers, the first time they open this close-up, you get emotions from people, and I've seen someone has printed it out and framed as a painting on their wall. So we've contributed to that. I don't know. I would say it's not high on our priority list at the moment, but at the same time, creating game content is such a spontaneous process. You never know when gnome might strike you again.
I like that, which means you have to play every DLC, every game that is released now, just in case. So we've got like a minute left. So Andres, is there anything that you want to add? Anything you want to say? Anything? The floor is yours, completely yours.
Okay, I mean, I wanna plug the game in a slightly different way than I mean the first DLC of our Rise came out, like that's kind of our big event, but actually a different thing that I want to mention is I would really appreciate if someone who really enjoys the game tries to recommend it to someone who doesn't play games at all, because I have this theory that Golden Idol is, even though it's a hard game, it's so approachable for someone who doesn't even have to know how games work. Like they can try playing it, and if they enjoy detective romance novels or mystery things, I think they might discover that they like it. So yeah, that's something I want to say.
I like that. So you all have homework, right? Recommend a game to someone who doesn't play games, and this is the joy of games, right? Is bringing more people into the community and just engaging with different people. And the more people that play games, the better. And I will be chasing you up in Discords to see if anyone's recommended it. But it's time, and I always hate ending because it's really sad. I just want to thank you so much, Andres, for your time. Um, the game was generally brilliant, even when it was difficult. It was so brilliant, and learning that it was a teeny tiny team is mind blowing. And I say this, I think we're quite lucky with this podcast because it's always being people who truly love doing what they're doing. And every game we've had, including yours, the love and the joy and the passion just shines through in the gameplay, and you can see it in Discord. Like I said, so far, I think the Case of the Golden Idol has gotten the most reception, and it was voted the favorite game so far. So yay!
Victory! Yes!
Yay! It's not a competition, but yay! But yeah, I'm gonna say bye.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was super enjoyable talk. I had a great time. Thank you.
I'm glad. I promise you. I didn't pay Andres to say that, everyone. I promise you. I'll give you your £50 later. On that note, I'll be here next week. No, I won't. I lied. Don't listen to me. I'll be here next month with another game. I don't know what it is yet. You don't know what it is yet. And yeah, we'll see what comes across. See you later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.